الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing our lessons on منظومة الآداب, the poem on the etiquettes, منظومة الآداب الشرعية الصغرى, the minor poem on Islamic etiquettes. We stopped last week in the discussion about boycotting innovators, wicked people, sinful people. And today we move to the next chapter. So from line 38, where the author says, Bab, Adabu salam wal liqa wal isti'dhan. The chapter about the etiquettes of greeting one another, of meeting one another, and of seeking permission. The etiquettes of giving greetings, salam, wal liqa, and meeting one another, wal isti'dhan, and seeking permission to enter and also exit. And we'll get to that later. Today we'll do lines 38 until 42. So the author here begins, line 38. قال Ibn Abdul Qaadir رحمه الله وكن عالما إن السلام لسنة وردك فرض ليس ندبا بأوتدي. He says, and be informed that greeting or giving the greeting, salam, is sunnah. And be informed that giving the salam, it's sunnah. And replying to the greeting is obligatory and not a recommendation according to the more correct opinion. So he begins by telling us about the ruling, the hukum on salam. وَكُنْ عَالِمًا إِنَّ السَّلَامَ لَسُنَّةٌ. Know that giving the salam, initiating salam, is sunnah. But when it comes to replying, وَرَدُّكَ فَرْضٌ لَيْسَ نَدْبًا بِأَوْتَدِي. But when it comes to replying, then it's fard, an obligation, which is the more correct opinion. So before getting into the ruling of the salam, let's begin by talking about the salam itself. In Islam, the tahiyyah, in Islam, our religion, the tahiyyah, the greeting for Muslim to a Muslim, is assalamu alaikum. And assalamu alaikum is our special greetings for the Muslims. And thus, we don't give the salam to non-Muslims. As for replying to them when they give us salam, it's a little bit different. We'll get to that later. So the first thing I want to mention is the history of the salam. Where did the salam come from? Where did we get assalamu alaikum from? What's the history? The first person to give the salam was Prophet Adam alayhi salam. Our father Adam alayhi salam is the first one to give the salam. Hadith Bukhari, Hadith Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions, when Allah created Adam and He made him 60 cubits tall. Yani cubits are dhira'an, yani from the elbow to your finger, that's a dhira', 60 cubits. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then said to him, ثُمَّ قَالِ اذْهَبْ فَسَلِّمْ عَلَى أُولَٰئِكَ مِنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ عَلَى أُولَٰئِكَ مِنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. Allah told Adam, go now. Go and give salam to those group of angels. فَاسْتَمِعْ مَا يُحَيِّيكَ مَا يُحَيِّونَكَ تَحِيَّتُكَ وَتَحِيَّةُ ذُرِّيَّتِكَ. And listen to what they reply to you, because that will be the tahiyyah, your greeting and the greeting for your children. So Adam alayhi salam was told by Allah to go to the angels, give them salam, and listen to how they reply. For that greeting is the greeting for you, Adam, and all your offsprings. All your offspring. فَقَالَ. So Adam went to the angels and said, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. فَقَالُوا. And they said in reply, Assalamu alayka wa rahmatullahi. May peace be upon you and the mercy of Allah. فَزَادُوهُ wa rahmatullah. So they increased over his salam, they added rahmatullah. And so at the end of this, we see that this is how as-salam came to us, the greeting. Adam alayhi salam is the first one to give the greeting. Now, question, so that's the first point. The history, the first person to give the salam is who? Prophet Adam alayhi salam. And then the malaika replied. And we know that this is what we as Muslims do as well, because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَحِيَّةُ ذُرِّيَّتِكَ. It will be a tahiyyah, the greeting for your offspring. But the question arises, how did Adam alayhi salam know to say salamu alaikum? Allah never told him what to say. He said, go and give them greetings. So how did he know to say assalamu alaikum? Here, Hafid ibn Hajj in Fath al-Bari, he explains that there's a number of interpretations. One of them, the ulama, they said perhaps Adam, he knew to say Assalamu alaikum because Allah said to him, فَسَلِّمْ, give greetings. So he went and said Assalamu alaikum. Another interpretation is that Allah inspired him, and this seems to be more correct. Allah inspired him to say Assalamu alaikum. And the proof to use is another hadith in Bukhari and Tirmidhi and others, that when Adam was first created, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the soul in Adam. And what happened when Allah put the soul in Adam? The soul went into him, and then Adam sneezed. And then Allah inspired him to say Alhamdulillah, and then the malaika told him, Yahramukullah. And so what we take from this hadith as well, Allah inspired him to say Alhamdulillah when he sneezed. So same here, Imam Qurtubi, Ibn Hajar, they say that Allah inspired him to say Assalamu alaikum. So that's how he knew. Because someone say, how did he know? In the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired him. Now from there we take another benefit, which is saying Assalamu alaikum is for the Muslims. It's one of the special qualities that we have. Because the question may arise, did the people before us say Assalamu alaikum? And the correct answer is, no, it's only for our ummah, i.e. Muslims of our ummah. And the proof, Hafiz ibn Hajar, he mentioned in Fath al-Bari, this is specific to our ummah. Because the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he said in the hadith that this is the greeting for you and your offspring, what he meant by that is specifically the Muslims. Because another hadith, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, and this hadith says that the Jews do not envy you for anything more than they envy you for two things: the salam wa ta'meen. It's a very important hadith, hadith Majah, hadith sahih. ما حسدتكم اليهود على شيء ما حسدتكم على السلام والتأمين. The Jews do not envy you for more than for two things. Don't envy you for something more than they do for two things. One is you, the Muslims, when you greet one another, and the second one is when we say Ameen behind the Imam. So very important. This hadith shows us why did the Jewish people envy us? Because it's something that we do and they didn't do. That's why. So when they greet one another, they have a different way of greeting. But what's unique for our ummah, anywhere in the world you go, you see a Muslim, you say Assalamu alaikum. Whether you know him, you don't know him, your culture, not your culture, this is beautiful. It shows unity. And nothing also shows more unity than when you pray behind the Imam, like in the Haram, and then he says, وَالضَّالِينَ, everyone says Ameen. It's amazing. That's a sign of unity that they don't have. And so as Muslims, we should take care of these two. It's very important. If you look at just the wording of those hadith, imagine other other nations are envious of us for that. As Muslims, we should be proud. Unfortunately, some Muslims, right, they hesitate to give the salam. They should be proud. Other people are envious. And also when you pray behind the Imam, this is one of the proofs, you say Ameen loudly. Because how can they envy you for something they can't hear you say? It's a side benefit, right? We know that saying Ameen behind the Imam is the correct opinion, loudly. There's many evidences. Some of the ulama say you say quietly, but the majority and the correct view is you say loudly. And this is one of the proofs. Because the Jewish people envy us because they hear us. See, they hear us. And that's a benefit you say when you're inside the Salah, don't forget to say Ameen. I mean, most people don't, but you see this benefit. Okay, from there we move to another point, before we get into the ruling on the line 38. Third point. What does the salam mean? When we think about it, it's very interesting. Muslims, we sometimes just skip over the basics. What does the Assalamu alaikum mean? Literally in English means, may peace be upon you. But what does that mean? What are you asking? So Ibn Hajar, Imam Nawawi, in the commentaries of the hadith, they actually explain a multitude of meanings that were given by scholars for the meaning of Assalamu alaikum. It's actually not one meaning, there's many meanings. One meaning was that Assalamu alaikum bima'na as-salama. You're asking for peace and safety for that person. Assalamu alaikum, you're asking the person to have, Allah keep you safe and may safety and peace be with you. And this is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as-salam. And as-salam min asma'illahi ta'ala. It comes in the hadith, as-salam min asma'illahi ta'ala wudi'an fil ard. That Allah's name is as-salam, and it's one of the names which He has wudi'a, He's placed on the earth, means He taught us, and we practice it, i.e. the benefits that come from that name. So when you go and you say to someone, Assalamu alaikum, one meaning is you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect that person, to give them salam, a safety, from all types of harm and deficiencies. Another meaning Ibn Hajar mentions is that actually is tabarruk. You're asking Allah to bless you by way of Allah's name as-salam. Because Allah is as-salam, right? Allah huwa as-salam. So you're asking the person, Assalamu alaikum. We ask to bless the person by way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he is as-salam. And his name is as-salam. That's another meaning. And this seems to be, we're in the same line of thinking. It's all a dua. It's a dua for you. When you give salam to someone, you make a dua to one another. But the meaning is, one meaning is seeking blessing. The other one we say is seeking the salam for the person. Side benefit from that meaning, because Allah huwa salam, Allah is as-salam, we don't say as-salam to Allah. We know the hadith ibn Mas'ud and others, when we did tashahhud, we don't say as-salam be upon Allah. As-salam ala Allah. No, we say tahiyyat. Why? Because Allah huwa salam. So Allah is as-salam, right? So what does as-salam mean? His name. When you say Allah is as-salam, means min kulli aybin wa afa wa naqs wa fasad. Allah is safe, protected, free of any deficiency, shortcoming, deformity, anything like that. That's why He's as-salam. So Allah is as-salam. So Shaykh Uthaymin said, that's why we don't say as-salam ala Allah, because you're putting shak now in people that, why would you make dua that Allah needs as-salam? He's already as-salam. So you don't have to go there. So, but it's a great benefit to know Allah is as-salam. So that's a benefit as well. Many Muslims, when look at the name as-salam, it means Allah is perfect. It's perfect from any deficiencies. Another meaning Imam Nawawi he mentions is that when you're saying Assalamu alaikum, you're asking Allah to give the success to the person. Najat, success and salvation. You're also asking the person, another meaning he gave is if you're saying Allahu alayk, may Allah be with you, i.e. Allah ma'ak, may Allah be with you, bihifzi wal-ma'nawi. May Allah be with you in protection, right? Like so with you, not physically, but means in His protection. Wal-ma'una wal-lutf, and assistance and kindness. So that's another meaning. That is, salam is given to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you and be with you and support. One last thing is that if we understand all the meaning of it being a dua across all of these meanings, one more thing, when you give salam to one another, why is it a valuable thing? For example, when we walk into a group of people, or we visit someone, or we see someone, we say, Assalamu alaikum. Why? What is it informing? Ibn Hajar says in Fath al-Bari, one other meaning is that the person who's giving salam to the other is informing them that he is safe from you. There's no fear. So you're giving the person a clearance between me and you is peace. No to be afraid. So if someone doesn't give you salam, you got to be worried, right? Because you're not safe. That's the first thing. Because sometimes you forget the person who didn't give you salam. Is it possible he'll harm you after that? Of course. So that's why salam is almost like a peace greetings. It's very important for the Muslim to always be reminded. And that's why we're very dangerous for Muslims to pass by one another or to visit one another. We're not giving salam. What really are we saying there? No barakah, no dua, no asking. That's very bad, right? That's very dangerous. And that's why the person who's stingy, the most stingy one is the one who's the most stingy in giving salam. Because really, he's stingy and asking good for you. So all of these meanings are important to take into your mind. Many ulama say if you combine all the meanings, they're all correct. And so in reality, Allah is as-salam, and the barakah and the salvation and the protection and all of this khair comes by way of Allah's name. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala في الحديث, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Shaykh Al-Albani authenticated Sahih Adab al-Mufrad and also Sahih al-Jami', as-salam ism min asma'illahi wada'ahu Allahu fil ard. فأفشوا السلام فأفشوه بينكم. That salam is a name from the names of Allah that Allah has placed on the earth, so spread it amongst you. So we take a benefit now we understand why we spread the salam and what was intended by it is all those meanings. Then the author in line 38, he said that salam, initiating salam is sunnah. It's a sunnah means it's a recommendation, the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, and from the things that someone's rewarded for. But when it comes to replying to the greeting, that's a must. So now the scholars, they differ slightly. Is giving salam, initiating salam, wajib, like fard, or is it only sunnah? Here the Shaykh, he holds the view, Imam Ibn Abdul-Qawwi, as the view of majority of scholars. Majority of the scholars hold the view that initiating the salam is only recommended or sunnah, not wajib. But some scholars said no, it's wajib. So there's two opinions. One group said majority said it's only sunnah to initiate. But another group said no, it's a wajib as well. So the group of scholars who said it's sunnah, which what the author holds. Ibn Abdul Qawwi, he holds a view that's majority of scholars. For example, Ibn Abdul Barr, he says that this is the view of the majority. Imam Nawawi also said that the majority of scholars hold this view as well. Initiating the salam is sunnah. And then he said, obviously when you're in a group, it's a little bit different. Right? When it comes to a group, the ruling is different. But just to add that point, when you're in a group, visiting another group, it's not wajib on all of them, only one of them. And we're going to get to that. But the idea is that some scholars say that's just the sunnah, initiating. And they differentiate initiating from replying. And we're not talking about shaking hands here. Shaking hands is separate discussion. So when you visit someone or see someone, you have to recommend it for you to start saying Assalamu alaikum. As for raising your hand and extending it and shaking, that's a sunnah upon a sunnah. That's even better. But that's not what's intended by salam. Because some people think you have to shake the hand, otherwise it's not salam. It's not salam, you can give it verbally. So the scholars who say, majority who said that's only sunnah, where did they get the proof for this? Because many of us might be under the impression that it's obligation. Because both of them have opinions, they have proof. So they use the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, the hadith of Abu Ayyub Ansari, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the Rasul said, no Muslim should boycott another Muslim for more than 3 days. Right? We all know this hadith that you can't boycott, we said last week, a Muslim for a dunya reason for more than 3 days. Right? Last week's lesson, we talked about when you can go beyond 3 days. Right? But now, the hadith continues. Between the 3 days, فَيُعْرَضُ هَذَا وَيُعْرَضُ هَذَا. So when they're in, let's say two friends, they have a problem, then they don't talk to each other for 3 days. During those 3 days, the hadith says, when they see each other, this one goes that way, this one turns that way. No salam. وَخَيْرُهُمَا الَّذِي يَبْتَدُ بِالسَّلَامِ. But the best of them is at the third day, the best is the one who starts the salam. So here Shaykh Mu'taym and others say this is proof that during those 3 days, they're not giving salam when they see each other. Because it's not wajib, it's sunnah. It's a good istidlal, it's a good way of looking at it. Because otherwise they'd be doing sin upon sin. Why does the hadith give them until third? Because that's a boycotting. But they're saying while they were not seeing each other, as if it means they're now sinful. They were going one way, the other was going the other way, there's no sin. So that's their proof amongst other proofs. But some scholars, they don't agree to that. They say no. The hadith that we look at is the other hadith. The right of a Muslim upon Muslim is 5, and one hadith says 6. So this is their hadith, this is their proof. For example, Shaykh Albani, he holds that view and others. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, إِذَا لَقِيتُهُ فَسَلِّمْ عَلَيْهِ. The first thing, the right of a Muslim, another, when you see him, you give him salam. And the hadith says, فَسَلِّمْ عَلَيْهِ. When you see him, let him give him salam. So they say that's clear proof. When you see a Muslim, you have to, because the Prophet commanded you. And this actually has a strong argument, because in reality, if it's a right of a Muslim, and you didn't do it, the other ones in the hadith, some of them are communal, like going to the janazah. But this one is not communal. If I see you, you see me, the hadith says, I have to give you salam. So they have a strong argument. In another case, at the very least, we could say, no Muslim should not. Any Muslim who sees a Muslim and you recognize him to be a Muslim, don't leave the salam. This is the best. Either you hold it sunnah or fard, don't miss it. In reality, if you look carefully, if you're a person wanting khair, you want to give the salam. You don't want to be the person who hesitant or has stingy. And this is important. So even if you hold it not to be wajib or fard, don't be the person who just walks by people and they don't give salam, because this is not sunnah. Because Shaykh Albani has added proof he uses. The Prophet ﷺ didn't tell us just to give salam. فَأَفْشُوا السَّلَامَ بَيْنَكُمْ. He said spread it. So spread it goes beyond giving it. So what does that mean? For example, I saw you, we met outside, I give you salam, then I went inside, then I came back, I give you salam again. Because someone said, I already gave you. True, but afshu salam means doing it more than once. So if we're supposed to do a salam again and again, every time we see each other, what about just one time? That's the argument as well. And of course, they have a strong case, but the majority is on the first side. Now, when the author, he says this, he says, وَرَدُّكَ فَرْضٌ لَيْسَ نَدْبًا بِأَوْتَدِي. That the replying to the salam, that one is fard. So the difference now is initiating could be sunnah, but when it comes to replying, no difference of opinion that it's fard. And it could be fard ayn or fard kifaya. Right? So it could be either be an individual obligation, or it can be a communal. So the example would be, let's say someone walks into the masjid, I'm the only person in the masjid, and they say Assalamu alaikum, and I heard them, I have to say wa alaikum salam. It's a must. But if there's a group of us, then one of us has to reply, and that suffices. So here we see that it differentiates depending on if there's a group. If there's a group, we're going to get to the next, one of the group has to reply. When it comes to initiation, same thing. If a group of us walk past another group, one of us has to give the salam, not all of us. So the benefit we take from this is that replying to salam is fard, ayn or kifayi, depends on the situation. And here Ibn Abdul-Qawwi says that the salam is sunnah, like we mentioned before, in his opinion. And then he mentions that when it comes to the group, it's also a communal obligation if you're in a group. And obviously giving the salam, right, replying to it is a must. Alright, there's no difference of opinion. Ibn Abdul Qaadir says there's no difference of opinion on that. So as Muslims, we have to be careful. If someone clearly said salam, we heard them, we have to reply. If we're not in a group, we have to individually reply. What's happening, sometimes we find someone clearly heard someone give salam and no one replies. It's very, very bad because it's a right of the Muslim and we're not allowed to ignore that right. So with that being said now, the author now, he clarifies this point and then he moves towards telling us the rules and regulations of salam. But before we get there, he doesn't tell us at the moment how to give the salam. The sigha, what's the wording? So you have different ways of giving salam. Right? You have a bare minimum, then there's a higher version, a higher. So we saw from the hadith of Adam alayhi salam, the bare minimum you can say, Assalamu alaikum. That's the bare minimum. And we know in the other hadith he mentions how many rewards you get for that. To say Assalamu alaikum, you get 10 good deeds. And if you say wa rahmatullah, it's 20. And if you add barakatuh, 30. So the best we have is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's the highest. Now some scholars said that you can go beyond it. And they bring some hadith that show that you can add wa maghfiratuhu and Allah's forgiveness. And the ulama differed on that. Right? They believe there's a post in Torah and Da'wah, they differed. Can you add wa maghfirah as sunnah or not? Some say the hadith is a hadith authentic and some say the hadith is weak. Right? So you can go online, you can see the difference. Because you see some people, they increase. There's a hadith that says Rasulullah said if you do add the word maghfiratuhu and Allah's forgiveness, you get 40. But some scholars say the hadith is weak, some say it's authentic. So you might find some scholars or people who follow that view. But you could still add beyond it once in a while if you want. But as a habit, it's best to stop where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped in the Quran and the Sunnah stopped, which is barakatuh. What about nowadays someone comes and says salam? Nowadays this is our way. It actually gets worse than that. Some people, they just say some other things, you know. So I think that one of the lessons they said some people they don't even say salam, just S. He said, what's that? You know, this is now people, how are they going? It's like today when you write WS, AS, whatever, I don't know, all those ones. Is that salam? The answer is no. But saying salam by itself, it counts. Qawl sahih. Saying salam, it's salamu alaykum. It counts. Why? Some people say, why do people say salam? Because you look in the Quran, how did Ibrahim alayhi salam, when the angels came to, what did he say? Qalu salama. He said salam. Because salamun means salamu alaykum. Or salam actually counts as salamu alaykum. So it's fine. Right? So if someone said salam to you, you're not going to... But if they say anything less than that, you say, okay, brother, you didn't give me salam. Right? So you have to be careful because sometimes we find we're falling short. Even when it comes to texting, it's easy. You just save it and you just send it easily. When it comes to the reply now, the ulama, where they get the idea you have to reply is in the Quran. فَحَيُّوا بِأَحْسَنِهَا. Allah says you have to reply when someone greets you the best of it, or rudduha, or respond to it equal. So you reply above what someone told you or equal. In Surah Nisa, Allah says when someone gives you a salam, you have to reply to it. That's the ayah they're using. Now, how do you reply? So for example, someone says Assalamu alaikum, you can only say wa alaikum assalam, bare minimum, and if you want to go higher, up to you. So if someone, for example, says to you Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, you can't say wa alaikum assalam. No. The ayah says either ahsan, better, or rudduha, or equal. And that's a problem we may find sometimes. Someone messages you the full salam and you say wa alaikum assalam. Sometimes you do by accident, it's okay if you didn't realize. But when we visit each other, we have to make that habit. Equal or more. That's the rule. What about now somebody, he gives you a salam, it's not even Islamic. For example, someone will come to you and just says, Good morning. Well, how are you doing? It's not Islamic, right? Do I have to reply to that one? The ulama say the ayah in Surah Nisa is general to all kinds of greetings. Even the un-Islamic ones, in the sense that it's not Islamic but it's allowed, you can give it. But not haram ones, like someone said Merry Christmas, we don't say anything after that. So you can't take that ayah and go above it. But if someone comes to you and says good morning, you have to say good morning. The ulama, they say that. An example, someone says Eid Mubarak, where's the proof? You have to say Eid Mubarak back. The ayah. Right? Because some people always wonder, if the guy says Eid Mubarak, what do I say to him? You have to say it back. Because Allah said, reply. And the greetings is general. That ulama, the ayah is any kind of greetings. And it's interesting because then scholars start getting to other things. Like what if someone said something you're not supposed to say? When do I have to reply? But we take a benefit that as Muslims, when someone greets you, it's not good etiquette not to greet them back. That's the bare minimum we're learning. And if you look at our society today, in the Western world even, we don't find it to be good etiquette. Someone greeting you, you just ignore them. SubhanAllah, how is that good manners? So here we learn a benefit to always be careful how you're replying, equal or higher. Then the author, line 39, he says, وَيُجْزِئُ تَسْلِيمُ امْرِئٍ مِنْ جَمَاعَةٍ وَرَدُّ فَتَى مِنْهُمْ عَلَى الْكُلِّ بَاعِدِ. That he says the greeting of one person from a group counts, and the reply of a young man amongst them it also counts from everyone who is distant or who is away from them. Meaning, if you meet somebody and they meet you, two groups. If one of the members of the group gives salam and another member from the other group replies, that counts. So when you're in the group, there's a different ruling versus groups versus individuals. And it's based on a hadith. And we're going to read the hadith here. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us the etiquette of a group hadith of Ali ibn Abi Talib, hadith Abu Dawood and others, authentic. يُجْزِئُ عَنِ الْجَمَاعَةِ إِذَا مَرُّوا أَنْ يُسَلِّمَ أَحَدُهُمْ. It suffices if a group passes by another that one of them gives the salam. One initiates. وَيُجْزِئُ عَنِ الْجُلُوسِ أَنْ يُرَدَّ أَحَدُهُمْ. And it suffices for the reply that only one of them replies. So we take a benefit that if a group of us walk in the masjid now and we're all sitting here, one of them will say salam, it suffices. If one of us reply, it's also fine. If we all reply and they all respond, it's also good. So we take a benefit of the group, a little bit different than the individuals. And so here we take that benefit. And this is what you might find nowadays when you go in public functions or events and the speaker says Assalamu alaikum and some of them only give salam, it's okay. And some people just say, I want everyone to give salam. You don't have everyone give salam. Well, somebody, the front row gives salam, it's okay, the back doesn't have to. Sometimes they're making a big deal out of it. Or for example, in school, right? If the principal or the teacher gives salam to the class, only a group of them can reply, yakfi. Lajnat Daima said it's okay. Right? Because some principal people say, I want everyone to give salam. They don't have to. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said only some. So this helps us to see that the ruling changes from individual to group. But obviously, if everyone responded, it's also very good because it's good to reply to the salam. So that's the rule we learn now. That when it comes to groups, it's a little bit different than when you're individuals. Now the author will tell us rulings about who is preferred to begin and who is not. So in Islam, initiating salam, now we know the ruling, we know how it should be done. Now we have to know who should start it and who should reply. Because Islam also told us the honor and the system of how to do it. Line 40, وَالتَّسْلِيمُ نَزْرٍ وَالصَّغِيرِ وَعَابِرِ السِّبِيلِ وَرُكْبَانِ عَلَى الضِّدِّ أَيَّدِ. Now the author, he mentions, line 40, that the greetings given by a small group, that's the first group, small group, or a young person, or the wayfarer, or those riding, are to give salam to the opposite counterparts. So let's mention, he said this is emphasized sunnah. So let's explain. Small group passes by a bigger group. Who gives salam? The smaller group. So right now, for example, a group walks into the masjid, we're a bigger number, they have to give salam to us, not us to them. That's one example. Second, the younger to the older. And this is because we know in Islam we have to respect the elders. And to respect the elders means you give them the salam. Now what if you don't know who's older? Then you can just give them salam, the one who you perceive to be older or more knowledgeable or more senior. And it's okay if he's older than you didn't know. If you find out he's older, then he's going to give you salam. But in the meantime, you have to assume who's older. Another one, the wayfarer. One who's on the Abir al-Sabil. So the one who's on the path lost, if someone comes by to him, he gives salam to them. And last, those riding to those who are not riding. So for example, somebody's walking in the street and someone's driving. The one who's driving gives salam to those who are walking. And so Islam builds this system of who gives salam to whom out of respect. Out of respect and out of honor the Sharia gave. But it's not a must. Because the Shaykh says, ayyidi, it's emphasized. So if the case happens, that if the opposite happens, then it's okay. The proof for this point altogether, Hadith Sahihain, Hadith Abu Hurairah, both Hadith, يسلم الصغير على الكبير والمار على القاعد والقليل على الكثير. That the younger one gives salam to the older, the one who's walking or passing by gives to the one who's sitting, and the small group to the bigger group. Another hadith says, وَيُسَلِّمُ رَاكِبُ عَلَى الْمَاشِي. The one riding on the one to give salam to the one who's walking, وَالْمَاشِي عَلَى الْقَاعِدِ. The one who's walking to the one sitting, وَالْقَلِيلُ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ. And those who are qalil, small group to bigger group. But now, let's assume the opposite happened. This is the etiquette, and it didn't happen. So for example, you're older, and you give salam to him first, and he's younger. Is there a sin in that? The author says, line 41, وَإِن سَلَّمَ الْمَأْمُورِ بِالرَّدِّ مِنْهُمْ فَقَدْ حَصَّلَ مَسْنُونَ إِذْ هُوَ مُبْتَدِي. He says that if the other way happened, those who are commanded to give salam didn't give salam first, and rather they replied, then the sunnah is still achieved if the other group was a Muslim who initiated. It's okay. So in the case the order wasn't kept, no problem. That's what he's saying, no problem. Because if you look carefully, most times this is not being upheld. Either people don't know or they forget. So it's something which is only sunnah, but it's good etiquette. And this is what the lessons are all about. These lessons are about etiquette, and adab. So it's good adab that we do that. We have to give adab and learn how to give the good etiquette. Now, if we understand this point, the author then, he reminds us now in line 42, an etiquette that goes up and beyond that. Which is that when you're in the company of people, and when you're visiting them or you're sitting with them, giving salam when you come, and giving salam when you go. Both of them are from etiquette. Hadith, line 42, and we're going to bring the hadith. He says, the author, وَسَلِّمْ إِذَا مَا قُمْتَ مِنْ حَضْرَةِ امْرِئٍ وَسَلِّمْ إِذَا مَا جِئْتَ بَيْتِكَ تَهْتَدِي. And give salam when you leave the presence of a person. You leave the company of a person. And give greetings when you arrive at your house, and you'll be guided. So two things that we have to be mindful of. When you walk into the presence of somebody, you visit them, sit with them, you give them salam. But when you get up, إِذَا قُمْتَ مِنْ حَضْرِ امْرِئٍ, you're getting up and leaving, you have to give salam. This one is probably one that maybe is neglected most in our time amongst one another, in that people may give salam when they meet and then disappear after, no salam. And this is not good, because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us to give salam on the way when we leave. Whether we visit someone's house, or is sitting in the majlis, or is sitting in the dars, or is sitting with the friends, before you leave, salam. Hadith Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu fi Abi Dawud wa Tirmidhi. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, إِذَا انْتَهَى أَحَدُكُمْ إِلَى الْمَجْلِسِ فَلْيُسَلِّمْ. When any one of you enters upon a gathering, or sits into a majlis, give the salam. فَإِذَا أَرَادَ أَنْ يَقُومَ. If you want to get up and leave, فَلْيُسَلِّمْ. Then give salam. فَلَيْسَتِ الْأُولَى بِحَقِّ مِنْ آخِرَةٍ. The first salam is no more deserving than the last. That last part, many of the ulama put emphasis. Then when they come to the dars or the masjid even, and you want to get up, you're actually going to leave for good, you give salam to everyone, you leave. That's the way. If you're going to go and come back, it's different. You're going to go, you're going, gone, salam. Right? Salamatullah. Right? And that's the etiquette that we need. As Muslims today, this one is often neglected. Why? Because when you go to the majlis, we give salam, and then the person doesn't think that he has to give salam the way out. And next thing you know, we're so-and-so. Even if he has to leave, he gives salam, especially when he knows he's going to leave. Or it could be in a closed city. He gives salam on the way out. Here, many of the ulama, they mention a benefit, which is that when you are giving that salam, the reason why the last one is there, emphasize the first, is that it gives the person, the people, to know that the person, when they're leaving, they're giving salam, so they're not just exiting without that. Imam al-Tibi, he mentioned in his sharh, that just as the first salam was telling them that they are safe from his evil when he's present, the second salam is telling them that they are safe from his evil when he's absent. Allahu Akbar. Look at that hikmah. You don't come in just with peace, you're leaving with peace. And giving salam when joining the gathering is not more important than giving salam when leaving the gathering. Rather, the second one is more important, Al-Tibi said. The second one is more important. Because why? You're giving salam on your way out, so you're at peace between me and you even when I'm not there. Think about it. When you give salam to someone, you ask Allah to protect them, to give salvation to them, to preserve them. In their company, when you leave, you also ask the same. And so as Muslims, we have to really deeply think about, look how powerful the salam is in Islam. The power of greetings. So when you understand the concept of salam, you give salam to your friend, are you going to backbite him when you leave him? You just give him salam. But many people, they don't think like this. This is a problem. We have cognitive dissonance between what we're doing and what we're understanding. Maybe we do, but we don't know. You don't understand. Imagine you tell someone, Assalamu alaikum, and you leave the person and you start saying bad things about them. What kind of salam was that? And really, if you think about Islam, Wallahi, it comes to protect people's rights in their presence, in their absence, and even after the death. This is our deen. Huquq of the people, even after they die. We know we're not supposed to curse people when they're alive, right? But when they die, the Rasul said, "La tasubbu al-amwat." Don't curse the dead, because they reach whatever they reached of their deeds. That's his deed. That's our deen. Preserving people even when they're alive. That's the easiest time to say something. But when we look at our society, Western society especially, there's no salama, there's no peace, there's no nothing. We're attacking in presence, in absence, online, offline, dead and alive. No one is safe. And if you think about us as Muslims, we have to up the level. The bar has to go high. We have to change it in our society and show people that when we say Assalamu alaikum, it's not lip service. It's deep meaning. The Shaykh also said you give salam when you visit, when you enter your homes. That's another powerful one. And I want to add a benefit to this. When you enter your homes, you have to give salam. Okay, you have to give salam when you enter. But there's adab when you enter your homes, for your own safety. First thing, when you enter your home, it's not in this chapter. The ulama, they mentioned, Hadith Sahih Muslim, you say Bismillah before you enter. It's the first etiquette. When you enter your home, Bismillah. So the hadith mentions, the hadith in Muslim, if a man comes to his home, وَذَكَرَ اللَّهِ, and he mentions Allah. Mentions Allah when he enters the home. Then he mentions Allah in the ta'am, when he eats. The shayateen are going to say there's no housing for us today and no food. The benefit, the ulama say, when you enter the home first, you have to remember Allah. But what does remember Allah mean? One meaning is any dhikrullah. The second meaning is, it's Bismillah. That's the first benefit. Before you get salam to anybody, open the door, Bismillah. And what do you notice if you do this? It will change everything. You're going to enter with barakah. You're going to enter nicely. Sometimes we enter the home, first thing enter is fitna comes. That person, no Bismillah, wala salam. No salam, he jumps to the kalam and the fitna happens in the home, the beginning. Maybe the arguing starts. Start with Bismillah. Because there's some people entering, unwanted guests, shayateen. They're not paying rent and they're not supposed to be in your house. And many people, they don't realize, they don't even know how to protect their own houses. Islam teaches to give Bismillah when you enter, and at night time to say Bismillah when you lock the doors. It's hadith, sahihain. These are very powerful hadith to protect the homes. Many of the houses today, very bad state. Because if you look carefully, there's all shayateen probably everywhere. No one's kicking them out. Next, when you enter, you say salam. So once you enter with Bismillah, give the salam to your family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you to give salam when you enter people's houses, and your own house is another one. So some people think when I go to other people's houses, it's my own house. Do I have to give salam in my own house? Yes, even in your own house. So when you go to another person's house, Allah says, بِذَا دَخَلْتُمْ بُيُوتًا فَسَلِّمُوا عَلَى أَنفُسِكُمْ تَحِيَّةً. When you enter their houses, give salam to one another, تَحِيَّةً, يعني a greeting from Allah. Surah Nur, ayah 61. But what about my own house? When I go into my own house, either somebody's there or nobody's there. If nobody's there, there's a rule we'll talk about. But if somebody's there, like your wife, your kids, your mother, your father, Anas ibn Malik, قال لي رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم يا بني إذا دخلت على أهلك فسلم. Oh my young man, when you enter the home, your home, give salam to your family. يكون بركة عليك وعلى أهل بيتك. It'll be a barakah for you and your family. Hadith, Tirmidhi, Sahih, Shaykh Al-Albani authenticated it. يكون بركة عليك وعلى أهل بيتك. And that's beautiful. You bring home barakah. Because remember, we just said what salam means, right? All that you come to your house. And who deserves more salam to your own family? But if you notice, sometimes we walk home, The time when you walk in and it's not a good entrance is maybe because you forgot the salam. You walked in rushing, no salam and nothing. There's another dua that some people read when you walk into the home, but the correct opinion is that dua is da'if, it's weak. So we have a dua when you get out of the house, but there's no authentic dua besides Bismillah and Salam. There's no other dua you say when you enter. This is the more correct opinion. But this point is very important because we look today of our houses. If you want to bring peace and tranquility to your home, start with the prophetic way. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has a routine. He's teaching us how to do things right. So when we go home, we make our house nice. But if you look carefully, sometimes you may even notice, just forgetting these things could do a lot to your house. Added to this, someone may ask the question, what if I go to my house and nobody's there? Just like here, I walk into the masjid and nobody's there. Do I give salam? You have to give salam. And it's interesting because some of the ulama, the tafsir of Surah An-Nur, they derive the benefit. Allah says you give salam when you enter the houses which are maskuna, yani there's people who are inhabiting. But there's no one inhabiting. Abdullah ibn Umar and Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, both of them, when they enter a house that was empty, they would say, Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin. Right? This kind of same wording when we see in Tashahud, they used to say that. Wa isnaduhu jayyid. Isnad is good. Ibn Umar, if you enter the house and nobody was there, you would say, Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin. May peace be upon us and the righteous servants of Allah, i.e., angels and others. Right? Because we also hope that the others, even if your family is not there, inshallah, malaika are there. Inshallah. And this is a good habit. So same thing, you walk into the masjid, nobody's there, you give this. It's really helpful to begin our gatherings like this and to teach ourselves always to give salam. So this is a great benefit for us, especially at home when you know no one is there. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin. Now, how can we apply these to our lessons? Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin in Sharh Riyadh Salihin, he talks about the hadith I mentioned earlier, the giving salam in the beginning and the end. And he says in this hadith we see that when a man enters upon a gathering, he says salam. And he wants to leave, he gets up to leave and the gathering and he should say salam. And Rasulullah said the former is not more of a duty or observing than the latter. Hence when a person enters the masjid, he sends salam on the Prophet ﷺ, and when he leaves he also sends salam. So now the Shaykh is extending the understanding to add more points. And before we continue, so we can apply this to the masajid, to the majalis, the durus. If you're going to leave and come back, it's different. But if you're going to leave for good, you give salam and you leave. And whoever heard you, and you can leave. Because ulama also talk about you say loudly, say quietly. You say enough that people can hear you, but also you don't want to interrupt the lesson. Right? For example, you know, just like when you enter as well, you give the salam, but you also don't want to necessarily interrupt. So you can still give it, because it's still part of our haqq. But then the Shaykh says something interesting. When you come to the masjid, what do? You give salam. For example, we know we enter the masjid, you make dua. Allahumma aftah li ababa rahmatik. And then there's some ulama mentioned the different riwayah says you send salam Rasulullah first. So if you think about it, you enter in the masjid, you send salam on Rasulullah, and then you send salam on the people, right? And then there's an issue now. Do you tahiyyat the masjid? You give salam to the masjid, you greet the masjid. And the Shaykh says in Mecca, before you leave, you do last tawaf, you give salam from Mecca, and you leave. All of this is salam. And that's interesting to think about. And before we continue, this is interesting to see in Islam. This salam is great in Islam. So this chapter has a lot. But the interesting benefit as well, when entering the masjid, the faid, it's outside this chapter. When you enter the masjid, you ask Allah for His rahmah. And when you leave, what do you say? Allahumma inni as'aluka min fadlik. Well, I ask you for your bounty. Why do you enter with rahmah and leave with asking for bounty? Because
when you leave, you usually attend to your dunya.
Good. You go into work. You're asking Allah for bounty because that's where your mind is. And when you're coming in, you want rahmah, you want Allah's forgiveness. That's where your mind is. So you come in like this and you leave like that. But what's interesting as well is that when we walk into the masjid, and we'll mention this point, it's not in this chapter, but the ulama discuss it. Which one comes first? Do I give salam to the people or do I give tahiyyat to the masjid? So here the ulama, they discussed, we know when you walk into the gathering, we said you have to give salam. But also know there's something called tahiyyat al-masjid, the greeting of the masjid. The first benefit is the wording tahiyyat al-masjid is not authentic from a hadith. It's no authentic hadith that says tahiyyat al-masjid, but the ulama called it this based on a weaker hadith, but the meaning is there. You're greeting the masjid. So some scholars hold the view that you greet the masjid before you greet the people. It's the house of Allah. You greet the house of Allah first, and you greet the servants of Allah. And this was the opinion of Imam Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah. In Zad Ma'ad, he held the view that the hadi of Rasulullah when you enter the masjid, tahiyyat the masjid first, and then you give salam to the people. And what's his proof for this? Right? Ibn Qayyim, he says this is Ibn Hadi Rasulullah. He used the proof the man who prayed poorly. He said the man who prayed poorly, when all of us don't know this hadith, the man who entered the masjid, he went to the corner of the masjid, prayed two rak'ah, right? And he prayed quickly. And that's why the hadith doesn't tell him how to pray. When he finished praying, he came to Rasulullah and said, Salam alaikum. Or Rasulullah said, alaikum salam, go back and pray. So Ibn Qayyim said that's the proof. You walk in, tahiyyat al-masjid before tahiyyat al-nas. But is that correct? What do you guys think? Is that correct opinion? Maybe if you come in the back of the masjid, for example, here if you walk in, you could pray in the back there, everyone's in front there. But what if you're walking in the front of the masjid? Some masajid, you're coming in front of everybody. You're going to walk past all of them and then go pray? So Hafiz ibn Rajab, Ibn Qayyim's student, didn't agree with him. He said, no, this is not correct. Fihi nadar, he says. So Ibn Rajab, in Fath al-Bari, he says this is not correct. It actually depends on the situation. If you're walking into the masjid where everybody's in front of you, you have to give them salam first. Because we already said that the Muslim give them salam. Then you give tahiyyat masjid. So you can combine and say it depends on the situation. And this is what Shaykh al-Albani also agreed to. This seems to be more correct. Fath al-Bari, Ibn Rajab, he says this. Because he says that in reality the hadith of the man prayed poorly, he happened to be at the back of the masjid. That's why. Then he came to Rasulullah. But Rasulullah in front of him, he wouldn't just go and walk past Rasulullah. That's not what it's intended by the hadith. So from here we take that if you walk into a masjid and people are in front of you or anyone you pass, give them salam, then go proceed to do your 2 rak'ah. But if you're in a place where you're praying far away, for example, if the halaqah is far in the corner of the masjid or up far in the masjid, you can pray and then walk, and if you meet anyone after that, so you can pray first. Right? In the case where you're not seeing anybody on your way. So that's a benefit we take. But all of this is adding to us that salam has status. And so the Shaykh, he mentions these points. And of course there's more, but inshallah we'll end with this much on line 42. And then the Shaykh is going to add more of these etiquette. Why are these so much etiquette focused on? First he starts with salam, then he's going to go to next week liqa. When you're meeting one another, what the etiquettes of meeting, and the isti'dan, seeking permission to enter and to exit. In Islam, all these are there to keep the peace and to bring the harmony and unity. If you look at our communities today in the Western society or on modern society, a lot of these rules of engagement, this is what they call them, rules of engagement, a lot of them are not there or not clear. You see, as Muslim, if we fall short in these angles, it's not like you're going to not practice anything else. Look in our society, these rules of engagement that they set up. And those rules of engagement are based on custom. And Islam doesn't negate customary things. But when the Sharia teaches something, it goes ahead. So it's very important to understand every society has ways. But when you look carefully at the Sharia and the maqasid of these practices, the purpose and objectives, you notice they bring about harmony, peace, and goodwill. Imagine when you see someone, you give them greetings. You're nice to them. And we're going to see next week, how do you see someone, you should smile and be nice. All of these things, shaking the hand. Why are all these there? To build harmony, unity, brotherhood, sisterhood. This is what's needed in Islam. And when you forget these practices, you create separation, furqan, division. Because how many people they get into problem with one another? Someone forgot to give the salam. Alright, you give salam to one person, you didn't give salam to another. And so that another point we're gonna get to is salams for everybody. Those you know and those you don't know. Those you know and those you know. So you don't know them. Why do you have to give salam to one you don't know? That's a good question. Why? Yeah. Exactly. So why do we give salam to one we don't know? I don't know the person. Good. It builds the love, the haqq of the Muslim. So if I don't know you, give me salam, now I'm going to know you. That's one way to get to know someone. You give them salam. Easiest icebreaker. So Muslim, salam alaikum. Alright, you don't have to say anything beyond that. Second, it also the etiquette of Islam. The idea of Islam building brotherhood and unity. As long as you're underneath the follow of Islam, you're a Muslim, all of us are the same ummah. So if I don't know you, you have to have a haqq on me, you have to know. And I extend my way. It also protects us from the kind of partisanship and the kind of cliques and the internal things of community and nationalism. Because imagine you only give salam to your people. So this is masalih of Islam. Because again, how can you build unity if you're only giving salam pockets? And that's one of the signs of the Day of Judgment. A minor sign of the Day of Judgment is salam is only given to people who you know. So, Hadith Allah Mas'ud is a problem, right? We see even till today. Someone who knows you comes and gives salam directly to you, and another guy next to you, he just walks like in front of you. One guy gives salam, the other guy is with you, he just ignores him. No, we shouldn't do that. And so all of these things, if you carefully examine them, it shows the perfection of Islam. And the opposite is true. If we fall short in giving salam to another, opposite is true, that the ummah is going to suffer from unity. And we'll finish with this point. If someone would say, how can we build unity in Islam and the Muslims? The way we give unity is by giving the salam. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Sahih Muslim, Abu Hurairah, he mentioned that, shall I show you something? If you do it, you will love one another. Afshu salam baynakum. Spread the salam. How can we lead to love between us? Shaykh Albani gave a long lesson on this. How giving salam brings love amongst the community. It comes from the fact Allah is a salam. That's His name. And by the barakah of His name, we're giving salam, Allah will harmonize our hearts. That's one. The second thing is giving salam creates a unity and affinity. If I know you, don't know you, I see you as Muslim, you feel connected. But if the opposite is true, if you give salam a lot, the community strengthens. Here, in our community, others, if you want to strengthen the community, lots of salam. And the opposite is true. The community with no salam, lack of unity. As you can notice, imagine there's no salam, people walking, leaving each other. Soon you'll find other gaps in the unity. For example, maybe we're praying together outside of COVID, obviously, and there's no shoulder to shoulder, no feet to feet. Another part of this unity. We can't connect our feet, our hearts won't be connected. And if you look at our ummah, you notice that these are the prophetic ways of guidance. Shaykh Albani was emphasizing in that lecture how if the community holds to this. People sunnah too in all Muslim countries, that how much unity is going to come. It's a prophetic way of someone telling us this. But what happens is that we may be focusing on other instruments of unity and forget the one that's in front of us. Maybe some people are talking about unity in different platforms and they can't give salam to one another. They can't even manage to get over personal grudges. Remember, if someone has a problem with you, after 3 days, can you stop salam? Islam says even if you have a problem with them, you have to give them salam. Look at that, That's one of the best ways to defeat the self. Because today you see someone owes him money. After 3 days, you're angry, still angry, give him salam. You have no choice. This is Islam. It tells us the haqq of a person goes above the... Doesn't mean that person still doesn't owe you, but look how the unity comes over your personal problems. But today, maybe our personal problem becomes the ummah. Our personal problem becomes the community problems. Right? This is the problem we may have today. We don't realize that when we start doing things like this, it affects the community, and when the community gets affected, disunity. And when there's disunity, then the ummah becomes weak. Right? So inshallah, these things that we're mentioning, these lessons, take them home, spread them. Start when you go home, teach people to give salam, and don't be stingy. Give a lot of salam, you get hasanat. And that's why one hadith that we're going to get to next week about when people are randomly meeting each other in the street, or someone is coming one direction, the other one's coming the other. The best is the one who starts the salam. So we should be hastening to give him salam. Not, you wait for someone, I'm special, I'm waiting for you to give me salam. If you're a person of khayr, you jump to give salam. Inshallah, we'll end with this much. Anyone have any question or something? Inshallah, we'll take, yes. Again, the origin. So we said the origin of salam comes from Adam alayhi salam. That one? So Adam alayhi salam was the first one who gave salam, and Allah inspired him, we said, to give the salam. Hadith in Abu Hurairah and Bukhari. And Allah inspired him to give the salam, and the angels replied, adding rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, and that became our tahiyyah for all of his children, i.e. the Muslims. So we take from this that our salam comes all the way back then. But that doesn't negate the fact that even though Adam said it, that the rest of the different ummah might have different greetings. So there's no negation. For example, Adam did it, but then it became specific for our ummah Muhammad or the Muslims. That's why maybe the Jews and others have different greetings. Till today they have something different, right? So that there's no negation in that, because even though it was taught to Adam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated something else for them and then bring it to our ummah. But that's the origin of salam, so it shows you that it's a very old practice and a beautiful origin. Yes?
Why do the Hanafis don't say Ameen out loud after in congregation?
So it's not only the Ahnaf, some different other madhahib, for example, from that region. In Iraq, they hold the view that they have some narrations, some Sahaba didn't do it, or that they would do it silently. So this is their proof that they use. But the hadith that we bring are clear, and some of the hadith, they also may not take its authenticity. That's another issue. They may not take the authenticity of this hadith. So it's not like they don't have proof. They do have proof. Right? So some of the Sahaba, they said they did taslim and they did it quietly. The ta'meen, did it quietly. But the correct opinion is that in Islam, that the evidence There's a hadith authentic, and there are many, many, many that show that. And that's why Imam Bukhari has a whole book on it, Imam Bayhaqi has a whole book on it. So we'll say that even though they have evidences, the evidences are stronger on the other side. Question says, is it true that you cannot give salam to a non-mahram? So we're going to get to the later. The salam of a man to a woman and a woman to a man. Right, so who are non-mahrams to you. So for example, you pass by a strange woman or a woman pass by a strange man, what's the rules? We'll get to that next week because there's a tafsir. Some ulama make tafsir, a detail, and others they don't. Right, so we'll get to that one next week. Another one says, what's the third example, the one on the lost path? Maybe I missed that. The wayfarer? Yes, the wayfarer. So the abir al-sabil. So the one who's like a wayfarer on the path. It also can be example of one who is traveling. Abir al-sabil is the one who's lost their wealth on the path and now they're needy. But it could also be interpreted as a traveler, one who's on a travel. Question says, should the whole salam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, when you enter your home? So when you enter your home, you have a choice. You could say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, or assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The best is to begin with the best. Right? This is the best. But obviously, if you just said assalamu alaikum, it's sufficient. But what you don't want to do is just open the door and they didn't say anything. And what you notice, like I said, these steps, they're critical. You be coming with the remembrance of Allah, and the hadith says it brings barakah to your house. That's what you're looking for. All of us were complaining today, our houses, they're lacking the barakah. We're feeling restricted or feeling that. This is where we do it. So you have a choice. You could do the full or you could do just the base, the assalamu alaikum. And lastly, he said the opposite genders have to give salam if walking by. That one we'll cover next week about the rules when the opposite gender meet. Do they give salam or they don't give salam? Yes.
Regarding giving salam, when it comes to what's the etiquette when you're giving salam with the hands? Like, does it go back to the urf of the people? Say if some they like give salam with two hands, or some like they put their hand on their chest, or they.
So that's a good question. When it comes to the salam, we have then the ziyada, which is the musafaha, yani the shaking of the hands. So here we know this is sunnah. It expiates the sins. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught us to do it with one hand. The riwayat al-sahih says his hand, yadahu, yani his hand to his hand. Now those who take the opinion of two hands, there's a narration of one of the Salaf in Sahih Bukhari, where he mentioned that he shook the hand of another Imam in the Salaf with two hands. So they say this is the permissibility to do two. So even if we said you could do the two, the sunnah is preferable to do one. Because it says he puts his kaf, his palm in his palm. So that's the sunnah. So now the customary practice, some of them they put on their hand on the chest. So some cultures, the shoulders, they press the shoulder, right? And then they give the salam. All of these things, the best is to stick to the sunnah. Now obviously it doesn't negate that if there's a ziyada above that, some other things that they do. But what we should not be doing is foregoing the sunnah for the custom. For example, putting your hand on the chest, there is no origin for that. Some cultures do, it's the best thing we do, you give salam. But what about if I'm far away? We'll get to that one maybe next week. What do you do far away? You raise your hand. Some people raise two hands. Someone to put their hand on their chest. They do a lot of different. So all of these, you see these things, and sometimes you wonder, how do you reply? You did this. What do you do? So inshallah, we'll cover next week because the ulama, they have some detail on it. They actually mention, can you raise your hand as an ishara? Does it count or not? Can you give salam with the head? For example, if someone sees you, you give them, what do they call it? I don't know. Use your head, a nod or one of those. And actually there's a riwayat. And I believe Shaykh al-Fajr has a book on all these kind of ahkam, so maybe he can give us more detail about those different rulings. But these are important to understand. There's more, alhamdulillah, but we'll cover them as we go. But you're right, there's something that can be acceptable and there's something which go against the sunnah. So the two hands, we can say it has origin, permissibility, but it's not sunnah. But better to avoid it. But if someone did it and they held this, we cannot reject their salam because they're doing two hands, right? But we could tell them that, if something better is this. Yes?
Not just was mentioned, but you said you can say salam and it's accepted. Could you also say alayka or alaykum, for example, which has a...
So good. If someone gives you salam, can I reply? He says salamu alaykum, can I reply wa alaykum? For a Muslim, you can't. You have to say wa alaykum salam. Right? Because wa alaykum, as far as we know, Allah wa alam, it doesn't cover all of it. Because salam, we have a proof for it. But they say wa alaykum is specific for the Jews and Christians and non-Muslims. So when they come to you, the Jews and Christians say assalamu alaikum clearly in Arabic, because now the ulama differed. If they say clearly assalamu alaikum, what do? One group you say wa alaikum assalam wa alaikum. That's it. Allah say wa alaikum assalam. You can say full. So this difference came to the origin of why you cannot begin. But if you look carefully, you notice that at least the Rasul told just to say wa alaikum. So the problem now is if you're replying to a Muslim the way you reply to a non-Muslim, that's problematic. Because the insinuation is that, are you from which group are you now, right? If I'm replying to you alaikum, that's offensive. And then you can also look at the origin. The ulama, they say the reason why these rulings came, because the Jews and Christians or non-Muslims, they will give salam in different ways. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum, which is ahjar, be upon you, rocks be upon you. There's this riwayat. So different type of wording they would use. So because of this kind of cautious that they make a dua against us or for us, they just wa alaikum, whatever you said back to you. Whatever, good or bad. And you can understand it. But maybe we'll get into more of that. But that's where the difference. But when it comes to the Muslim, we have to reply equally. The only reason why salamun counts, we said, or salam, because we have evidence for it. So as far as wa alaikum, we know the Jews and Christians, alaikum salam is the better. Allah amir fajr, he knows better. Allah alam, yes. So it's a good question. You come to the dars, so you say Assalamu alaikum loudly. So you say it loud enough that someone can hear because you're entering, but obviously not to the point where you want to disturb the lesson. Some they differ. How loud do you have to say it? So the bare minimum for a salam to count is someone else heard you. Someone else have to at least hear you. Just like when you sneeze, when you say Alhamdulillah, enough that someone else heard you. But we do know when the lesson is going on, you don't want to interrupt the lesson. Some people come and interrupt the whole thing, they give salam to everybody. And we understand that they're giving salam, but you can give salam and some of you heard you, and then, because we said, some can reply and the rest can go on. But you manage, try to be in the middle. But that's the thing, some they mentioned, that's why some they held the view that when you come to the lesson, you don't. Because but then they say, but you can't come to the majlis. So preferable to do it, at least that some can hear you, then you sit down. And that's why you notice the big gatherings, there's no harm in that. Wallahu alam. Yes. So that's a good one for the child. When the child is very young and they don't know how to give salam, it's better for them, the older one, to give salam to them, to teach them. Especially if they don't know. But if they know, if they're younger enough to know, they should give it. But what you notice, little kids where they don't know, the Rasul used to give salam to them and teaching them that this is salam. And this shows you the humility as well, that Rasul wouldn't pass by the children and not give them salam. So if you see a child who knows better, obviously you'll be encouraged to go and give salam to the older. But if you know the kid doesn't know, you go and you give them salam and you try to teach them this is how to get, because this is the good tarbiyah. The lines that we shared, inshallah, they should be put into the website, inshallah, afterwards. We went to line from 38 to 42 today. 38 to 42. We apologize, maybe the lines were not shared today, yes. So if you're reading Quran and someone gives salam in the masjid, somebody has to respond. So if you're one of those people, you give the salam. And this is true when it comes to reading Quran. Some people have the view that you don't have to give salam because I'm busy reading Quran. But there's a hadith that shows that you can still give salam to the person reading the Quran, and the one reading the Quran will give salam back. The one reading the Quran gives salam back. So it's not like some people think I'm reading the Quran, I'm busy. No, you can still give the salam. So you're right. If you're reading the Quran, no one gives salam, you give the salam and you continue. Just like if someone came to you specifically. But what about if someone, we forgot to mention this, someone's in the majlis, or you're walking, you give a salam to someone, they don't reply to you. You feel very hurt. You shouldn't feel bad. There's a hadith, Sahih Jami' 3697. The hadith says that if you give salam, then people should reply. And obviously it's going to be a degree for them of reward. And if they don't reply, then those better than you will reply. The angels reply on your behalf. Right, so or replied in behalf for you back. So you shouldn't feel bad if you walk in, no one giving salam. Because some people say, no one giving back salam, I'm not giving salam then. No, that's wrong, because you're supposed to give salam, and if they don't give salam, وَإِن لَمْ يُرُدُّوا عَلَيْهِ رَدَّ عَلَيْهِ مَنْ هُوَ خَيْرٌ مِنْهُمْ أَطْيَبٌ. Right, so that gives you encouragement not to lose hope if no one's replying your salam. And if they're not replying your salam, and maybe you also want to check that maybe you're not familiar to them or something, work to try to bring khair, because you shouldn't stop the khair because someone else is not doing it. Encourage them to. Yes?
The ziyada of ta'ala, when you say salam, is that sunnah or is it okay to say that?
So some people ask the question, can we say ta'ala? So some of the ulama believe they said it's better to stop and do what the sunnah taught us. It's not wrong to do now and then, but some people, they want to add things that are not there, make it nicer or cooler. It's just stick to sunnah, that's the best. So the Shaykh al said just to stay away from it. It's not wrong to say it sometimes, but not to do it all the time. Yes.
On top of the question, so if you're doing dua as well, would you reply as well? If you can dua and you're the only one?
Same. If no one is replying, someone has to reply because the community obligation means if no one does it, we're all sinning. So if you're doing dua, obviously, inshallah, someone will reply, but if you can give them salam, that's all right. Because even in salah, and this is where the proof is, the salah, you're the most busy. In the salah, the Prophet says salah is busyness. In the salah, if someone gives salam to you, what do? You give salam with your hand. You have a signal. So why even the salah? Because salah, you're most busy, and in salah, there's dua. So it shows you that if someone's doing something else, it's still. The only time they said you shouldn't, if someone, for example, is in the washroom, or someone, for example, like in those kind of situation, or is not a state of janabah, they have differed over that. But what's more correct is only when you stay like a washroom, using the washroom, actually using it, you shouldn't reply to a salam. But we see that this is a good point. You come to the masjid, no one else knows. Let's say everyone doesn't know this ruling except for you. It wouldn't be fitting to say, making dua, I'm going to ignore the rest of it. Because at the end of the day, we said, the maslahah of the salam is very powerful for the community. And if you notice, the communities, they give a lot of salam, that has much khair with them. In the community. Inshallah, yes.
What about, do we wait for someone to give us salam when they enter our house or give us a call? Or do we rush to give the salam?
So that's a good one, on the phone. So now adab al-hatif, when you're on the phone, who gives salam? The one calling or the one who's called? The one who's calling. The one who's calling gives salam. And the same, one knocks your door, he's seeking permission, he says salam alaikum, and he walks in, and if you allow him. So they said the analogy, when you're coming to someone's house, he knocks the door, and we're going to get to that isti'dhan, then he says, Assalamu alaikum, can I enter? This is the etiquette. And you say yes or no, or if you're busy, and then if you say yes, you walk in. So because he's coming to you. On the phone, when he calls, he's calling you. So sometimes you're waiting, and the other person's waiting. So the problem is that if you notice that, you give salam. And then you tell them. Because some ulama, they say that some people, they don't know. Shaykh Bakr Zayd, he has a book in English, you can read it. It's called The Etiquette of the Cell Phone. Excellent work. And there he talks about that. He brings that point from this analogy, and the ulama, they agree with him. But obviously, like we said, if it happens the other way around, there's no harm in that. Right? But obviously, you should try to train the person, train yourself as well. When you call someone, you give them the salam. Right? But if it happens the other way, inshallah, there is no sin in that. But that's where it comes from, the origin of that practice. Yes?
What's the etiquette in giving salam to people who can't respond? Like somebody has food in their mouth eating.
Exactly. So we're going to get to that one next week. Good. Someone who's eating, you give them salam. Or someone, so the ulama, they mentioned some of them, they said that you shouldn't. And some said you can. But you don't shake their hand. Because eating, that's not the time to shake someone's hand. Right? So these kind of things we'll talk about next week. What do you do in those situations where you can tell they're doing something, but you still interrupt them? And what seems to be more correct, yes, you still have to give them salam, but obviously without also doing more interruption. For example, someone's eating, you give them salam, and when he's finished chewing, he can reply. Or he's drinking, he can finish and give you salam. But what you don't do is just pass. Right? The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was using the washroom, and the man gave him salam. He didn't reply immediately. He finished, and then he can turn and give him salam after. So that shows you there is origin. But you're right, there's a discussion about that one will come. Yes.
When you're using your phone, sometimes people use ASC.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to use that?
So that's a good question. We use these kind of acronyms, ASC, WSW, and we should avoid them because they're not salam. Like we said, saying salam counts. So if you're really lazy, just go salam at least. We have origin for it. But when you say these other numbers and letters, and it's not really salam. And what you notice is some people may write in W/S. And this is not salam. And now it's as if we've now become lazy. Same with the salawat ala Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what we can do now, alhamdulillah, this is a smartphone, you save it. It's smart, right? The phone, you can save these things and just put it. You don't have to be stressing yourself anymore. And sometimes I feel it comes from the people who forgot the huquq of this, because if someone writes to you, Assalamu alaikum, fully, you have to reply also back. So even on the phone, the etiquette is there, and that's why the alhamdulillah scholars have written about these things, because the smartphone has its own etiquette as well. Yes.
The hadith that come as a command, the same scholars take it as a sunnah. Is that what the difference?
Yeah, so they said that the first one shows that if the people who are in a state of discord can walk away from another without giving salam, it's not a sin. But the other group said that Rasulullah said he should give salam. They say it's not a must. The hadith says it's a right. But a right doesn't mean it's a must, you have to do it. Because the other ones are also fard kifaya. So they say that it shows that it's something you should do, but the command there is not us because of another hadith, and they try to combine them. Whereas the other scholars look at the other group and say that that's a group who's already in a bad state, they're in discord. It's not evidence really, but you can see that some try to combine and some try to different. And so really the majority is on the side of Sunnah, but you can see those who say it's wajib have a strong argument, and we should be safer to always give salam to someone. And added to that, we'll talk about also next week, if you come to someone who you can't tell, are they Muslim or not? What do you do? Right? For example, you're mistaking them to be a Muslim, but they're not Muslim, and you give them salam. Or you give a salam to somebody, or you didn't give because you didn't think they were Muslim. Because that's a problem we may have. You couldn't recognize them. So what happens then? We'll talk about that as well. Yes?
In terms of when the salah is done and the people are doing the tasbih, and perhaps the first individual to step up, does he give salam in that situation, or does he stay silent and just keep quiet?
So that's another thing. When you're in the masjid and you finish the salah, and you're leaving, you can leave with the salam on your way out. Or you finish your adhkar, and if everyone is gone, you just give salam to whoever is around you. Like we said, if you're leaving the jama'ah, you give salam on the way out, that's fine. That's good. Because at the end of the day, you're just leaving the community. But you notice sometimes you may finish salah, nobody's there. Then you don't have to give salam. The one left, you're the only one there. But you're right, you just get up, on the way you can give the salam. And that's fine, inshallah. Or those at least who are around you, if you walked already far. As long as you're left with the salam, is again, the meaning behind it, leave people on the khair. And that's a good habit to be in. Because that way people will remember, he left. Remember, he gave salam to everybody. Because sometimes you might go and then someone's waiting for you and you left. No one knows where he went, no salam, nothing, he just disappeared. And then the other guy was waiting for you the whole time. And no one knows what happened to you.
In terms of, how it's, you said if the masjid's open, it's empty, you can give salam. However, when you're leaving, it's also empty, do you again give salam?
That one I don't have proof, Allahu A'lam. Maybe the Shaykh knows, I don't know. If you're leaving an empty space, do you give salam on the way out? Allahu A'lam, I don't know.
Also, question, is there a specific tone for salam? You notice like some people, they give monotone, some people they with emotions, and some supposedly they show more love in their salam by the tone of the voice.
So that's a good question. The tone of it, Wallahu A'lam, if its specific tone is more emphasized. We do know that some scholars, they said that it shouldn't be elongated, some of them they mentioned. Some people see very salam alaikum, very wide. So Imam Ahmed held if you just make it short. So you're right, you cannot necessarily say that someone gives a particular tone, as far as I know. But obviously when you're giving salam, you should be encouraged when you see a fellow brother Muslim. That's the least we should do, because we're going to get to liqa as well. If you're giving salam to someone, and you're giving salam is very cold, it's not part of the way of meeting the Muslims. So the best way to meet them as you are happy to meet them, because it comes with that kind of brotherhood. And so this is the best way, because if you're going to get to next week, salam, and then there's the meeting, how do you meet people? So if you're really trying to be a good Muslim, you're giving salam very short, very brief. This person maybe is holding things, Wallahu A'lam, and it's not befriending. You should avoid anything that can be misinterpreted. As a Muslim, you have to avoid any practice that's going to be misinterpreted, and someone else may take it to be offensive. Inshallah, salah is near, we'll end with this much. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.